Hola a todos, les doy la bienvenida a esta segunda conferencia de cómo diablos le hice para hacer lo que hago, con la participación de Lalonde y Ming del despacho de Olson Conning. Les recuerdo a todos que esta conferencia, dado nuestros ponentes, será en inglés, por lo que les pido pongan mucha atención y que si tienen alguna duda, recuerden que tendremos media hora de preguntas al final de esta conferencia. Sobre todo, les agradezco muchísimo a todos los participantes que están aquí reunidos con nosotros hoy. A continuación, les voy a leer una breve semblanza de la firma y de los arquitectos que el día de hoy nos acompañan. Hello, everyone. I welcome you to this 12th conference of How the Hell Did I Do What I Do? With the participation of Edward Lalonde and Ming from the Office of Olson Conning. I remember everyone that this conference, given our speakers, will be in English. So I suggest to pay attention. And if you have any questions, remember that we will have half an hour of questions in the end of this conference. And I thank you all in advance for your participation. Now I'm going to read in Spanish a brief profile of the firm and the architects that are here with us today. So, Olson Conning es una firma que practica el diseño colaborativo cuyo trabajo se expande en el contexto de paisajes construidos y naturales. Fundada en el borde de la cuenca del Pacífico, adoptan la perspectiva de un extraño. Diseñan para personas, lugares y experiencias, equilibrando el pensamiento racional e intuitivo. Ming se unió a Olson Conning en 2005. Fue nombrada directora en el 2020 y nombrada propietaria en el 2022. Con más de 25 años de experiencia en una amplia gama de sectores del mercado, cree que la arquitectura puede ser más que un simple edificio hermoso. Tiene el potencial de tener un impacto significativo en su entorno y en las personas que interactúan con él. Apasionada por el diseño, se centra en la experiencia humana. Ming aborda cada proyecto desde las viviendas privadas hasta los edificios públicos con el objetivo de mejorar las vidas de sus usuarios e impactar positivamente en la comunidad en general. Le gusta especialmente trabajar con los clientes durante las primeras fases de programación y planificación, donde la identidad y el carácter de un proyecto comienzan a emerger. Ming se centra en escuchar y comprender la visión del cliente en relación al contexto del sitio para ofrecer una arquitectura que responda cuidadosamente a las necesidades del usuario y subraya una conexión con la naturaleza. Defensora del servicio tanto interno como externo, cree que los arquitectos tienen una responsabilidad de contribuir positivamente al futuro de los entornos naturales construidos. Ella prioriza la inclusión y la accesibilidad, apunta a incorporar prácticas y materiales sostenibles y se esfuerza por mejorar el rendimiento de los edificios y la resiliencia a largo plazo. Fuera de su trabajo en proyectos, Ming es una mentora dedicada y dirige a la comunidad de equidad social de su empresa. El director y propietario Lalonde posee una rara combinación de creatividad lúdica y pragmatismo riguroso. Para él, esto se traduce en una práctica arquitectónica donde el buen diseño surge a través de la experimentación y el diálogo, pero requiere rigor conceptual para poder desarrollarse plenamente. Edward es conocido por su capacidad de equilibrar la narrativa conceptual más amplia de un proyecto con las necesidades individuales del cliente. Es a través de este diálogo con los clientes que han surgido las soluciones más innovadoras de Edward. Antes de unirse a Olson Conning, en 2008, Edward trabajó con Steve Hall en Nueva York, a quien atribuye su rigurosa pero discreta ética de trabajo y su sensibilidad centrada en el diseño. Tiene una maestría en ciencia de la arquitectura avanzada de la Universidad de Arquitectura. Actualmente, Edward forma parte del comité asesor profesional de la Escuela de Arquitectura de la Universidad de Washington y también participa activamente en su alma mater WSU, donde ha sido crítico invitado de la Escuela de Diseño y Construcción. Además, Edward contribuye a varias iniciativas de desarrollo personal en toda la empresa, lo que refleja su interés en asesorar a la próxima generación de arquitectos, impulsando los conceptos. Les doy la bienvenida a ambos y a nombre del Colegio de Arquitectos de Puebla agradezco muchísimo su participación el día de hoy. I welcome you both on behalf of the College of Architects of Puebla I greatly appreciate your time today. So the camera is all yours.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for having Edward and I today. We are honored to be here.
Yeah, it's a privilege to get to share a little bit of what we do here on a day-to-day basis at Olsen Kundig. And I think we'll just get right to it because I think you'll learn a lot about who we are through the materials that we're presenting today.
Can you all see our screen?
Yes, we see your screen now.
Okay, perfect. So a lot of what we talk about that we do here at Olsen Kundig, the firm's been around in practice for over 6 decades, so over 60 years. And a lot of times we will attend conferences and we get a lot of questions about how what the firm does to stand apart and to stay relevant over the years. So we're going to talk a little bit about the unexpected journey of Olsen Kundig and how we came to be. And this is a talk we've been working on that centers around 3 general topics. One is innovation, adaptation, and evolution. So how did we get here? It all started in 1959 with this man here. This is Jim Olsen, the founding owner of the firm. And when he declared to his parents that he wanted to study architecture, they gave him $500 and asked him to build a structure on the family property in Puget Sound. So this is the structure that would be known as Long Branch. And the image on the far right is one early iteration of it, but each of these 4 models represents an evolution of that original structure that Jim built in 1959. So over the years, he built from that original piece and added to it to what it is now on the left. And I think it's that constant iteration, as you see in the sketchbook there, working through ideas and having them manifest in the built form. It's a structure that emerges from our Pacific Northwest landscape. And something that's very important in Jim's work, and that has been handed down to all of us that work here at the firm, is just the importance of a connection between nature and architecture, and really trying to create spaces where you feel like you're connected to the nature. And here in the Pacific Northwest, the nature may look like this, what you see in this image here. And we're lucky to have these really great views and vistas to the mountains. This is Mount Rainier on the left, which is the view from Jim's Long Branch cabin, and also the Pacific Northwest or coastal Salish landscape, like the seashells and the stained fir and cedar that you see on the right. Even in his urban sanctuary, where Jim lives just 2 blocks from the office in Pioneer Square, he brings nature into his urban spaces as well. Another important thing to Jim and his work is art. And the firm has a long history being connected to the art community. Here in his living room, in his apartment in Pioneer Square, he set it up almost like a gallery where it's dense with artists and different artists' pieces. So everything from glass art to paintings to sculpture in the living spaces. And you'll see more of this as we show some of the projects that we brought to share today. Jim is still practicing and striving to do some of the best work that he's ever done. He's focused on doing excellent projects and also on mentoring the next generation of architects here in the firm. There's also Tom Kundig, one of our founders. And Tom always talks about architecture being the blend of the poetic and the rationale. He often quotes, what would a farmer do? And I think that can be demonstrated in this sketch for the chicken point where there's a concept about lifting a big window by using a counterweight or a bag of sand, as is noted, and gearing to lift a big piece of steel and glass. So using the innovation as you would do on a farm to kind of work something together to make it work a certain way. In his work, you'll also see very basic materials, such as concrete block here, used in a very poetic and beautiful way, unconventional way, and in a way that also frames the landscape, which is very important in all of our work here. Tom is known for blurring the edges between inside and outside, as you can see here on the Burke Museum, where a part of the building opens up so it becomes both indoor and outdoor space at once. Tom is a design force, and he really pushes for design excellence here at the firm. Both Ming and I have had the pleasure of working with him. I have worked with him for over 16 years. And in fact, before I came to this firm, I had never done a residence, and now I do almost mostly residential work. And we've both benefited from his mentorship over the years and still work with him quite a bit on all of these projects that we're going to share. Kirsten Murray is another owner of the firm, and she works a lot in the civic realm and with community. She is responsible for leading the Tacoma Art Museum near Seattle in this urban site, and also has focused a lot on the workplace. And this is really important as we came out of the pandemic a few years ago, because many businesses and we're trying to encourage employees to come back to work. And they did so by doing what we call repositioning, where they will renovate to bring new life to old buildings to encourage people to come back and enjoy coming back to the office. So a lot of what Kirsten has worked on is this sort of repositioning or reimagining and revitalizing old spaces that were at the end of their life.
Alan Maskin is one of the partners, and he has been instrumental in our cultural work at the office. He is experimental and pushes what it means to be a designer in creating innovative and immersive experiences that challenge the conventional ideas of space and interaction. He uses storytelling through design and a collaborative approach, integrating all kinds of disciplines, art, technology, architecture, and culture in his approach. This is an example of one of his projects, the Bob Dylan Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Alan was instrumental in the inclusion of exhibit design in the work at Olson Kundig. The Space Needle is a project which is iconic to Seattle. It was built in 1962 for the World's Fair. He led the design for the renovation, which built on the original concept of a place devoted for observation. And he pushed that idea, incorporating floor-to-ceiling glass and glass floors and a rotating glass floor as well, creating these visitor experiences, which give a new perspective of the city and the surrounding. And Kevin Kudo King started the firm as an intern in 1996 and has worked on a variety of projects, from single-family residences to hospitality projects across the world. His approach focuses on creating spaces that harmonize with the environment, enhancing the human connection to nature and functionality without overwhelming surroundings. This is the Leach Botanical Garden in Portland, Oregon. It's about the experience of the human and the connection to nature and embracing all the senses and the power of the journey. And this is epitomized in this project, which is simply Shenandoah, which is a wellness center in Virginia, and incorporates not only wellness of the human, but as of the building as well. Sustainability is integral into this holistic approach. And then HP joined the firm. He's on the far right of the image. to join the other owners as CEO in 2018. He's been shaping the firm's strategy and helping it grow while staying true to its creative and innovative roots. He brings an outside perspective and has been a key role in expanding some of the work that we do in the hospitality realm. And in 2022, Edward and myself were honored to become part of the firm's multi-general structure and also became owners along with the others in this image. It's created a place for development of new leaders, and it contributes to our long-term resilience.
We will show you a range of work today, but it's important to acknowledge that the design work that you see at Olsen Kundig is really rooted in residential. And in some ways, that is what we're most known for externally. And we bring that same level of sensibility and client care to our other project work as we bring to the residential. And a lot of that has to do with a high level of detail and craft, and also client service. You'll see the sketch that Tom did on the left, where there's quite a bit of intentionality to his ideas and working through the details, and also working with fabricators to see what's possible. And that becomes realized on the image on the right when it's finally built. And that's something that's really unique to Olsen Kundig, is we really embrace the collaboration of working with fabricators, builders, and the people that are responsible for making the things that we draw a reality. And we find that we never come to the room thinking that we're the smartest people or that we know the most. We actually really embrace learning from other people. Our clients bring us to new and interesting places. And with the residential work, we're able to hone our skills of using light, color, proportion, and scale to frame spaces, such as this distant view of the rock in the ocean beyond this window here. The glass farmhouse is a client that came to us with the inspiration of Philip Johnson's glass house, the famous glass house. And so Jim, it was a very rural site. And so Jim used that as inspiration to design a glass farmhouse, an all glass building, but you can see in the shape of the roof that it pays homage to traditional barn structure like the one that you see on the right, creating the same kind of transparency that Philip Johnson did and a connection to nature beyond. Our residential work has prompted us to do probably one of the smallest projects we've done to date, and that is a hardware line that you see here, where it's a series of door pulls, cabinet hardware, levers, and roller wheels that we can specify on our projects. When we talk about innovation in the work of Olsen Kundig, I think the first thing a lot of people think about is the kinetic portfolio. So at Chicken Point, you see this little girl with a broken leg lifting 6 tons of glass and steel using simple gearing and counterweight, as that sketch I presented earlier indicated. The Connect portfolio has evolved over the years and even includes a moving house and a moving structure, such as the Maxon Railway, where our client Lou is a graphic designer that works from home. And this is his studio that moves on rails so that he can commute out to work at the beginning of his day and then back for lunch or at the end of his day. Shadowbox is in the San Juan Islands at the edge of the Pacific. And it's a project that uses kinetic elements to adapt to the harsh environment of the Pacific Northwest. So you see here a building that opens and closes throughout the course of the day to become more transparent or more opaque, to give the client a range of different comfort as she enjoys the space. It even goes as far as to have a bath in her bathroom with a skylight that opens up so that she can enjoy a bath under the stars. Another point of innovation is Sawmill. This was the first time that the firm won the COAT Awards, which is an award for sustainability. This project is both net zero and off the grid in the high desert climate of California. And it uses a range of sustainability technologies to be both net zero and off the grid, not only PV, but also radiant heating and some passive strategies as well. The project is also using materials that we would call tough as nails. The client had access to concrete block, which we recycled and repurposed for this project. It's also steel and concrete. The fourth ward is a project that's 1.1 million square feet. It's in Atlanta, Georgia, which is a very harsh, hot environment. It's along a bike trail in the city and is one of our most sustainable projects to date. What it does, because of the extreme environment in Atlanta, Georgia, it has a daylighting strategy where there are louvers on the facade to manage the harsh daylight, but allow for views out. It also manages rainwater collection, geothermal, and is innovative in the way that the tenants share the utilities so that they could take advantage of the natural path of the sun throughout the course of the day. On Fourth Ward, our kinetic elements show up at the storefront so that retail tenants can open and close to welcome people that pass by on the street. And our first ever prefabricated house at Arrow is Olsen Kundig dabbling with the notion of prefab and really looking at how to cut down the time it takes to construct a home, with the ultimate goal, as this becomes more and more efficient, of saving costs. This is one of the first iterations, so it's still a work in progress. But now that Arrow Homes has been occupied for over a year, it is not only net zero, but actually net positive. And with the prefabricated houses, we learned that it's important to really save the design moves to only one or two ideas to try to make it more affordable than maybe some of our other residential clients or projects. So in this case, it's the one steel beam that goes through the space that helps us get the wider span. Shinsegae International is for a national fashion brand in Seoul, Korea, our first ever high-rise tower. And we're bringing that level of residential sensibility to this larger scale project. And some of you may recognize the reference to Maison de Verre, Pierre Chareau's famous building in France, that shows up at a different scale on the facade of this building here. The Burke Museum at the University of Washington campus is at the edge of an urban campus, and it challenges the idea of turning a museum inside out so that there are real objects and real scientists that visitors can engage with. And that is, in fact, part of the exhibit experience. Recompose is an interesting project. We had a relationship with Katrina Spade, and this was a person that was doing research with one of the universities here in Washington State around the concept of human composting, which at the time was not legal in the United States. And just through the process of collaboration, it evolved into what would be the first ever human composting facility, which sort of critiques the idea of traditional burial methods, which, as you might know, are hugely devastating to the environment. So human composting is a much more sustainable approach. But working with Katrina and the group, we were able to sort of realize this vision. And now it's become, there are more of these that have shown up in other states in the United States and around the world. When we think of our work through the lens of adaptation, we often look at these great landscapes that we get to build in. And we will often say that what we do is a small building in a big landscape. And I think the key here is that the architecture becomes secondary, that the nature is the primary thing here. And so when we design in these spaces, we really want to make you feel like you're part of the landscape. So when you're in the great room on the left, you really feel connected to the landscape, or the image on the right where we use the architecture to frame distant views. Another small building in a big landscape is Delta Shelter. It's designed in a floodplain along the river, so it needs to be elevated off the ground for when seasonal floods occur. It is also designed to close down when the owner leaves, and so that the structure is protected when he's away. Anoha is a museum that tells the story of Noah's Ark, which, as you may know, exists in many different religions, not just the Christian religion. But it's not only a story about a tale about characters, but also about climate change and flooding. This project is a renovation and a repurposing of what was historically a flour warehouse in Berlin. So you see the concrete vaulted structure from this historic photo here that becomes the backdrop for children's play. And within the exhibits, Alan and his team innovated around the idea of repurposing everyday objects. So if you look closely at the elephant in the background or this other animal that's in the foreground, those are actually repurposed objects. For instance, that the head of the animal in the foreground is a bicycle seat. And if you look closely, you'll see other recognizable objects that are reshaped to be these kind of familiar animals. And as Ming mentioned, the Century Project at the Space Needle. In 1962, for the World's Fair, Seattle built the Space Needle. It was one of the fastest construction ever. It was 1 year to build this tower. So when we were hired a few years ago, the idea was to look back at some of the early ideas that could not be realized either because of the time frame of construction or because of technology, and to find a way to realize those using modern technology. So the first ever rotating glass floor at the height of the city. Another repurposing or adaptation is 8899 Beverly. And this was an office building that was vacant. And so our clients purchased the lot and wanted to repurpose it for multifamily residential. So you can see the before image on the left and then the image on the right of how it was reshaped to live a future life, and how these former office spaces become transformed to be these beautiful residential spaces with the Los Angeles skyscape beyond.
Now I'm going to speak to the evolution of some of the work at Olson Kundig and how we can move from a small project like the rolling huts, which are huts elevated on wheels for camping, and with steel clad 200 square foot footprint, and how a project like that can lead to a project like, and then they're elevated above a floodplain so that the natural meadow can flow through. They're oriented in a way so that they can maximize the views from each cabin. And the zoning for this project didn't enable for what the client had intended, but by the addition of the wheels, which are on the rolling huts, they then could be categorized as these mobile homes, which allowed it to happen. And from this project, the LeBron James Innovation Center at Nike headquarters came about. And one of the lead designers at Nike happened to see the rolling huts and said, I want whoever was the mind behind the rolling huts to work on this project. And this project is about innovation, and it is 700,000 square feet, and it has the athlete at the core of the building and celebrates the vision of the company. And to our residential roots, this is a project in Mexico that is on the ocean, and you can see some of the language, the connection from interior to exterior, the use of the trellis for shading. and how that translated into one of our first hospitality projects, the Marriott Los Cabos, and some of the sensibilities that you see in that project with the trellis and the layering, the connection to the water, to a project which is the Earth House, which was originally designed in 1968 by Jim Olson, which has a green roof on the house and a framed view to our Mount Rainier in the Puget Sound, and how that translates to the city cabin, which also has a green roof, and it's an urban sanctuary, and was one of our first net zero projects that we worked on, and was inspired by the client's collection of Native American art, and back to that connection to nature, to the Arrow Home, which Edward spoke to earlier. And we keep evolving in terms of the work that we do. Who are we? So this is a photo of our Seattle office. I think the design approach and our culture share common goals. We emphasize design, dialogue, collaboration, and experimentation. This is our Seattle office located in Pioneer Square, which is a historic neighborhood in Seattle. And during the pandemic, we opened our New York office. As people were leaving the city, we saw the opportunity to invest in our urban spaces. The office is located in Midtown Manhattan and provides a hub to support our East Coast projects and extend that dialogue on two coasts. And this past year, we opened an office in Chicago. Chicago is the birthplace of modern architecture and now bridges our Seattle and New York office. In terms of innovation within the work that we do within the firm and the investments we make in culture, the culture of the firm, the Thursday Crit has been around since the inception of the firm. It's a time where we bring people together and discuss projects, design challenges, or internal initiatives. It represents a culture of design, dialogue, and experimentation. Free-flowing discussions, there could be model building, there could be design competitions. It encourages firm-wide participation and collaboration. And anywhere from intern to partner, all are able to share ideas, as well as our other departments. The Global Internship Program started in 1996 with the principle of reciprocal learning. It offers a 6-month paid internship with a rotating group of interns starting and stopping. It provides mentorship and hands-on experience with real projects, site visits, to finished projects, to projects under construction. And the interns are involved in the projects, creating mock-ups, building models, working on presentations, and getting integrated into teams. And every intern is required to do a capstone project and present in front of the entire office. Here's some of the posters from some of the interns, and the topics are amazing, and we learn as much from the interns as they may learn from us. The Monday meeting is also a weekly activity, and we've transitioned since the pandemic. The image on the left shows how we used to meet all in person. We transform our 6th floor commons into a space where we could all gather together. We cover internal news and project updates. We celebrate individual and firm achievements, and it's a place where we also have speakers from outside the office come in. It's something that was established over 25 years ago, It expands our thinking through perspectives outside of traditional architecture. There's usually a theme, and there's a committee that helps organize these speakers who come in, and it focuses on creativity, innovation, and craft. Cha is also another institution that has happened within the firm. It's a chance for us to get to know our colleagues better. And if you're not familiar with it, it is 20 slides with 20 seconds per slide. And I think we are at our 30th edition at this point. Another thing that had happened, and this happened after the economic downturn in 2008, 2009, there were empty storefronts within our Seattle neighborhood in Pioneer Square. This is on the base of our building. And it intended to help revive some of the storefronts. This was co-led by Kirsten Murray and Alan Maskin. The storefront was a venue for the firm's community collaborations. It was a place to do R&D and a place for exhibits. And this lasted for a couple of years, and it rotated through different leaders within the office and different collaborators within the city. This is an image of the record store, which was a collaboration with the Seattle Art Museum. And this idea of the storefront started with the idea of what can we do together that we cannot do apart? This was the mushroom farm. It was a collaboration with City Lab 7, and it was taking into account the wasted coffee grinds and using those to create mushrooms. The Skid Row exhibit was in partnership with 9 local organizations who provide services for and justice to the region's homeless population. There was a mixture of interpretive graphics, artwork, and presentations during this exhibit. The 1 Million Bones project was an ask to stand against humanitarian crises by making symbolic bones from clay and paper mache. And so we set up a workshop within the office for making bones, and we're able to contribute 1,500 bones to the over 1 million bones in Washington, D.C. Each handmade bone generated $1 for CARE, a humanitarian organization fighting global poverty. And through the years, we've had to adapt with our growth, with the changing world, and have added specialists in our firm. That includes visualization and building performance and planning and landscape. This is an outgrowth of a holistic design approach. In addition to these additional leaders, we have interiors, which stems from Jim and Tom's passion for interiors. We have leaders for project delivery, marketing, construction integration, HR, finance, technology, and operations. We continue to add and grow as the firm grows. In-person mentorship has always been important and critical to the firm. We've recently started some more structured in-person mentorship and virtual mentorship through work with our DEI consultant. And through that evolution and work with our DEI consultant, we've formed some affinity groups. And those affinity groups are based on feedback and data that we've collected from the people within the firm. As I mentioned, we've started work with LTH Global, a DEI consultant. This came after the death of George Floyd. and looking to what we could do better at the firm. And so we've been working with LTH Global to embed DEI strategies into all aspects of our practice. Within our community, we've worked with organizations like Sawhorse Revolution, which is a local non-for-profit, which teaches teens carpentry and design through community projects that give back, along with other K through 12 organizations working on building experience. The firm gives each employee 8 hours of volunteer time to use. This is paid time, and we've organized groups, activities to give back to our local community. In-house design competitions, which often take place at CRIT, are opportunities for a larger group to share their design voice and have something built. This is an example of the Ice Cube, which was part of the Seattle Design Festival. Homeroom was another evolution within the firm. I think coming back from the pandemic, we had some growth and we realized that disconnection and not knowing everybody within the firm. And so these homerooms developed to create these smaller venues to get to know each other. And in feeding our continued mentoring and learning, we've developed some internal classes. OKU, it's a place to share history and knowledge. We have classes like PM 101. Some of the classes are eligible for continuing ed, and it's a place for anyone to teach and share knowledge.
So we were going to end with a couple projects that are on the boards and kind of where we are going next. So you see this world map of the places that Olsen Koenig is designing projects for, and just share with you a few things that are coming around the corner. So as both Ming and I explained, there was the natural progression from our residential work into hospitality. And the Moonlight Basin Resort in Montana is one of the firm's largest projects to date, with one and only the hotel operator. And it includes 7 buildings, large buildings, plus over 50 branded residences. Again, applying some of the design sensibility from our residential work into hospitality, such as what this image shows here. We work also in the beaches with 6 Senses in the Grand Bahamas, and also in the mountains, such as Four Seasons in Telluride, Colorado. We are doing our first ever life science building here in Seattle. And we remain committed to the arts. So working with an art organization in Telluride on a revisioning of an art building and gallery space inside an existing structure in their downtown core. We have also began experimenting with AI, and we actually have a group of individuals that manage and keep up on the technology around AI. I think that the firm has been working and dabbling in AI for over 2 years now. This was a project with the city of Seattle where we used AI to help vision what the future of downtown Seattle could look like. We have individual artists within the firm, such as David, who have produced images and inspiration boards for our clients, or Alexandra, who is an interior designer helping to create a mood board using AI. Laura Bartunik worked with Alan Maskin and our Shinsegae client to imagine a retail experience in one of her retail shops in Korea. And it's based on the childhood story of Alice in Wonderland, and using Midjourney to create these storyboards that are different scenes from the story of Alice in Wonderland to create inspiration for what kind of retail experience you could have. And that led to a final, more refined mood board. And so if you see the text below each image, it's taking literal excerpts from the story of Alice in the Wonderland and putting an image to that, again, using Midjourney. And finally, creating a presentation that realizes what that space could be and what kind of experience that could be, again, using AI. So with that, we thank you for letting us share a little bit about the work and who we are, and would welcome any questions you might have about anything you saw today or anything else we can speak to.
Yes. Thank you all.
I was telling you that we have a question in the chat, but first of all, I wanted to thank you because the presentation was wonderful, and that end with the AI was perfect. So we have here a question that says, in the collaborative participatory form of design, how do you get to the final point? How do you land it? When you collaborate with all your partners, how do you land to a project, to a final project?
I think we mentioned this early on, but I think we may be known to the external world as a design firm, but we think of ourselves internally as a service firm. So what we do is we listen. And we listen to our clients, no matter whether that's a residential client or an institution, and really let them lead the way, honestly, with what they want in their project, especially if it's something personal like a residence. And then we use that to start developing ideas. And we're very collaborative. And we always start with pencil sketches because they're not very committed in terms of the time investment. And then those eventually evolve, to, real documentation. But we're always talking and communicating with our clients, no matter what kind of clients they are along the way. So I think a lot of architects, even some of the architects I worked with in the past, they will come in with a vision and tell the client what the architect's vision is. We're the totally opposite. We listen to the client first, and then we come back with an idea that we think speaks to their wishes.
Oh, I think the audio went out again. But I agree with Edward. I think very much it's about the listening, and we don't keep designing when we reach a point where the client is happy and we feel strongly as well.
Okay, now you hear me?
Yes.
I was telling that listening to the client is the clue for having a good project.
And if a client has an idea, we always try it and we explore it. We don't discount any ideas.
Okay. So we have another question here. It says, congratulations, amazing work. What message will you like to give to the new generation of architects through your new vision?
Well, I think we're learning from the next generation of the architects as well, and trying to evolve as well, and not holding on to ways or things that we've done in the past. I think we are, to Edward's point, I think listening is very important, as well as being patient. I think that with how quickly things are moving, I feel like there needs to be a time just to kind of process and be patient.
And willing to adapt and be flexible. And I think for the practitioners on the call, there's a lot to learn in architecture. I learn new things every day at the office. And so as a new practitioner, somebody coming into the practice, I just think, do as much as you can to learn as much as you can possibly learn, because architecture is so complicated and it's so vast.
And that's something I really appreciated when I started at the firm in 2005, was just how much everybody knows, and that there were this really talented group of people so passionate about design, and everyone had so much to offer. And I learned so much from all of the partners over the years and have been mentored by so many at the firm.
Yes, I also think that you always have something new to learn in all ways. So thank you for that answer. So it says in Spanish, so I will translate it the best that I can. It says, hi, good afternoon. My question is, what are the most important points in your design process?
Well, I'll use the same answer. The most important point is our clients. Without them, we wouldn't be here. And so I think also relationship building, and sometimes we use the term ally building, but collaboration would be another one. It's just building relationships and building trust, I think, is a big part of what we do here. But I think also we take documentation and detailing very seriously at Olson Kundig, because any project is a lot of money. Even the most basic project is a lot of money. And so we take care of our documentation so that it is detailed properly and that it is constructed properly. And we work very closely with the people that are building it to assure that it's, the best it possibly can be. So I think all those things are actually the most important thing.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Then says, good afternoon again. Congratulations for the presentation. And the question is, what is the inspiration to go to some sustainable project?
What are some of the goals of the sustainable project?
Yes, what is inspiration that like leave you to go to the part to go to a sustainable project, like the direction for the sustainability?
The direction for the what? I'm sorry.
The art or the
What make you like take the project to the sustainable direction? In what form, in what point do you decide that it has to be a project that goes with the sustainability points in general?
So at the beginning of every project, we have a building performance team, and they do a site analysis, and they help with the process of kind of determining what recommendations the site and the project, whether it be water or geothermal or solar or wind. And when we meet with the clients early on, we ask the question and we propose ideas, and that's an integral process in the start of our projects. And from there, I think we incorporate that with our architecture.
And I think building codes too in the US and other places abroad too have become a lot more strict when it comes to energy. And so, and energy is so expensive as well because a lot of our clients want a lot of glass. And as you know, the glass can be really hot or really cold. And so then we develop strategies to mitigate that uncomfortableness, whether that's overhangs or exterior blinds. And so sometimes just the designs that what the clients want from the design needs to have a sustainability component to it in order to function in a way that's comfortable to them.
And for example, the Atlanta project that Edward mentioned, there are louvers on the building, which are not only part of the aesthetics and design of the architecture, but also are very functional in helping mitigate the sun and the solar gain.
Okay, so the movement of the architecture also helped you to be comfortable to the client.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. That says, congrats. I would like to know, sorry, it goes away, the question. Yeah, here. Congrats. I would like to know from your perspective, how you become an international firm, and what was your first step?
I think in some ways it's hard to really pinpoint the exact move, but I remember when I was in New York City, because I started the practice working in the firm in New York City, and I remember seeing Tom Kundig's book in a architectural bookstore there. And then I think the Outpost project that I shared today in Idaho was in the New York Times. And so I think that getting those key publications that are internationally reaching really helped. And I know Tom and I worked with a client in Rio de Janeiro, and they saw our work for the first time in the New York Times. And so I think it's just those key publications really helped broaden the audience. But I think also being willing to jump on a plane and travel, I think has been key to Kevin's success in a lot of ways. You know, he travels internationally. I think for the next 2 months, he's traveling internationally, in fact. And so being willing to get out there and meet face to face with clients has been super important as well.
Okay, thank you. So publications are a fact to consider in their international way. There says some bibliography that you recommend, some books or magazines or things that can help to improve architecture?
Well, I think we've been really grateful that AD, Architectural Digest, has been really generous with the firm. And I think that it's an interesting one for architects because in a way, it caters more to interior designers, you might say, than it does to architecture. But we find that because of the way that we design for clients, that a lot of that appeals to them, that sensibility that you see in AD. Personally, I really like Local Projects. I don't know if you know that publication. They're from, I think, Australia or New Zealand, but I find that personally very inspiring, and the photography is amazing. And they have an Instagram. I sound like I work for them now, but I follow them on Instagram, and I have found a lot of inspiration there as well. I mean, it's amazing what access our phones have provided us. From like when we went to college, it was a lot different.
Can you repeat the name, please?
AD, which is Architectural Digest.
Yes,
And
and the
then
other one, the Australian one?
the Local Project.
The Local Project.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So we can all follow them because of
Yes.
that, of course. So, Ming,
Oh, no,
do you
I,
have some books or?
well, in terms of getting that, I think is that's building on how some of the projects have come to the firm. I mean, I know that clients have come where they've seen a project of one of of Tom or Jim, for instance, and just called the firm and said, hey, will you work on my project? And Tom will jump on a plane and meet with them. And I think that's part of it.
There's no project too small for Olsen Kundig.
Yes.
I think that for anyone, yes. So it hurts. Hello, my name is Miguel. First of all, thank you very much for the presentation. And then my question is, if you could measure on a scale to 1 to 10, how important to you is think in artificial intelligence will be for the modern architecture?
It's an interesting question. And I mean, part of me, I think both Edward and I have a love of hand drawing, and there is many of us in the firm still have our parallel rule, and we start all the projects by hand. And so as AutoCAD and Revit and all these programs have come about, there's been personally, I have resistance to because I love to draw, and my process is through hand drawing is my thinking. But I think the firm embraces new technology and realize that we need to evolve. And there are people within the firm that are doing amazing work with AI. How far reaching and what an impact it will have is a good question in terms of architecture, film, writing. I mean, I'm not sure what's going to happen.
I think of it just as a tool, just like those other things were. And so we're still the architect, and we're the one leading the direction of this tool. And I think that's the important thing to realize. The only thing that concerns me with AI is the energy consumption and the space it needs for all the computers to run AI. And that's something that we hear about in the news a lot here in the US, that these AI computers are in these big warehouses that generate a lot of heat, and they need to be bigger and faster. And so I think that's a big problem to solve, and maybe an architect will come up with a solution for it.
Hopefully we see it soon, what happened with the AI.
Yes.
So the next question is, which architects influenced you?
I mean, Carlos Scarpa is one of my favorite architects and has definitely influenced me. And I mean, I've been at the firm for nearly 20 years and see all the partners over the years have been my mentors. And I've learned so much from Jim on proportion and scale, and Tom on just so much that I feel like that my partners are also my mentors.
Yeah, I agree with what Ming said. And I've mostly worked with Tom, and I've learned so much with him over the years, but also I've developed a relationship with Jim the last year or so, and that's been really rewarding as well. And Alan and Kirsten and Kevin, and they've all taught us great things. And even Ming and my other colleagues, and the people we work with that aren't on the camera or are really inspiring. I also was fortunate to work with Stephen Hull, and I think that he was a big inspiration for me too early in my career, but I've learned so much since leaving the firm. And our two firms, although they both strive for high design, I think the way that we work with clients is so different here. And so I've just, I think I've learned a lot most these last, 15 or 16 years I've been here.
Okay, thank you. That's amazing that the college can keep influencing you through the years. So Harris says, good afternoon. My question goes for innovation. Which is the process? Sorry, just a minute. Which is the process of how to get to an innovator project? Which is innovation for you in a project?
I think there's a lot of room to grow when it comes to delivering sustainable projects. And I see that as a future innovation opportunity for us, is really pushing our clients to do the very best that we can from a performance point of view, from a sustainability point of view, and accountability towards the environment. I think there's a lot of room to grow there. And I also think that we could do better about, we've been doing houses for 60 years, and I think we could share that knowledge to help with our housing crisis that we have in the United States. And I wish that we could show up a little bit more to give back some of what we've learned through our residential work to help other people with tackling housing in general. And I think that would be a really huge innovation moment for us.
Yeah, no, I agree. Kind of there is a housing crisis in the United States. And how can we show up more in that realm?
Okay, thank you. I think that your firm is just innovation and evolution since the Space Needle. It was amazing. I didn't know that it was from 1962, or your window that cuts connected portfolio. That's amazing too. The framing one where I work, we have so much inspiration in what you would do today. So another question is, what do you think? Well, if you know some of the classic architecture in Mexico, if you know something about Puebla or the downtown on Mexico City, what do you think about the classic architecture in Mexico?
Well, when I think of Barragan is also one of my favorite architects, which I know doesn't speak to necessarily the classical architecture of Mexico, which, but his architecture is very inspiring. His use of color and light and space.
Yeah, and I think that the materials that are used in Latin American architecture and South American architecture, I find really inspiring. In some ways, the different weather that you have there, maybe a more mild climate than we have here in the Pacific Northwest, allows you to maybe have better connection to indoor, outdoor spaces. And so in general, just that flexibility of being able to have natural ventilation, to have more porosity between inside and outside, all that stuff is super inspiring. And Mexico City, I've never been to Mexico City. I really want to go. I hear the contemporary architecture scene and the art scene is pretty incredible. And so maybe someday in the future for me. Ming is actually working in Mexico though, so she could speak more specifically.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm working on the coast, which is very much a very hot and a somewhat harsh climate.
Yeah, but you are a little bit on the north, no?
Yeah.
You have to come to Mexico. We welcome you over here in Puebla or in Mexico City when you want.
Yeah.
So the next is congratulations and thank you in the name of the College of Architecture for your amazing conference. Thank you, so interesting. It says good afternoon in the plans that you do. You make it in AutoCAD?
Revit.
Revit, okay.
In terms of the,
That was the
Yeah.
question.
that's our probably main program. I mean, I think people use different tools. So some people.
Rhino is another
Rhino,
popular. And all the Adobe
yeah.
suites for graphics.
SketchUp. Well, I like SketchUp, but there's different tools and people use what they're strong at.
Okay, perfect. So
Different ways
Revit,
of
Rhino,
communicating.
SketchUp, the pencil,
Yeah.
Yeah.
all kind of tools.
Not so much AutoCAD though.
Yeah.
No,
Sometimes,
okay,
but not often.
okay, perfect. So thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting. Then says, which project has challenged you most creatively and why?
I would say I worked with Tom on the Burke Museum, which is at the University of Washington. And that was challenging because it lasted over 10 years. So that's another thing is architecture takes a lot of time. And when you work with a university, especially an urban university and a good university, Washington, there was a university architect, a university landscape architect, and then there was a building committee, plus our clients, the Burke Museum themselves. And so navigating the relationships of a multi-headed client was very challenging in a way. And not to mention the scientists that, do their work in the museum, but ultimately it was very rewarding too.
I worked on a project at church in Seattle during the pandemic, and I think that was really challenging, just given the impact of the pandemic on the construction industry and for clients who just are the most wonderful clients and really wanting the project to move forward and to stay on schedule, and the concrete workers in Seattle went on strike, in addition to like all these things, and just compounding. I think that the pandemic has been really challenging for some of the projects, and just pushing things forward.
Okay, thank you. It says, just to say that I want to know you when you were here, to know that here in Puebla, we love the work that you do and your craft.
Thank you.
Thank you a lot for the presentation. And your work is without a doubt. How does it needs to be working with the clients and with the projects with the AI? It says, do you have Instagram or you're looking for your project? Yes, they have Instagram. It goes to also Kunding. You can follow them. Congratulations, an incredible presentation. The question is, how do you can use the artificial intelligence to design sustainable architecture?
It's an interesting question. I'm not sure. I mean, it seems like AI is helping doctors diagnose things that they might not catch early on. So I don't know. Is that a potential to help push sustainability in architecture? I don't.
Yeah, maybe the computational aspect will help. I think anytime it can speed up the process, I think that's going to be an innovative thing, because the more time it takes, the more it costs generally, the more waste there is. And so I think those are all ways that tools can help. But even though we've been working with AI for probably 2 years, we're still experimenting with it every day. And so everything from like doing hand sketches and letting the AI finish a hand sketch to like, we did this experiment where we would find an image from our website and have AI finish the image, you know, like a
Context.
famous image. And sometimes it was right and sometimes it was way off. It was kind of a fun experimentation, but it's powerful and it's interesting at the same time.
And terrifying.
Yes, so terrifying sometimes, yes. I agree with that. Just the two last message. The third, thank you a lot. Excellent presentation. Thank you, and interesting. So very interesting, the project. So that's it. Thank you for your time. We are very grateful with you too. And we hope to see you soon here in Mexico.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you so much.
Have a good evening.
Good night.
The same. Good night to you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oops.